So friends, you may recall a few days ago, Donald Trump's lawyers filed a motion telling Judge Tanya Chutkan that she must remove herself as the presiding judge over Donald Trump's federal prosecution in Washington, D.C. Well, now, Jack Smith has filed his reply, and he has a little something to say about it. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, a few days ago, you may recall, we talked about a motion that had been filed by Donald Trump's defense attorneys in his federal prosecution in Washington, D.C., telling the presiding judge, Tanya Chutkan, that she must recuse herself. She must remove herself as the judge presiding over his criminal trial in D.C. That would be the one for his attempt to unlawfully, unconstitutionally overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Now, as you may recall, when we went through that motion, it had little to no legal support. It had no factual support. In short, there was no there. And now, special counsel Jack Smith just filed his reply, making that clear. Let's start with the new reporting. This from CNN. Headline: Special counsel argues against Judge Chutkan's recusal in federal election subversion case, saying Trump cherry-picked comments. And that article begins, Special counsel Jack Smith argued against Donald Trump's request that U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan recuse herself from the federal election subversion case against the former president, saying in a new filing that Trump had taken the judge's comments in Capitol rioter cases out of context in order to manufacture allegations of bias. Trump's motion seeking Chutkan's recusal centered on comments that the Obama appointee made about the former president during sentencing proceedings for two Capitol rioter defendants. Prosecutors with the special counsel's office said in the filing Thursday that Trump's recusal request cherry-picks Chutkan's comments about him, and that the judge's past statements were not evidence of improper bias or prejudgment of the current case. The prosecutors argued that Chutkan, in the rioter proceedings in question, was addressing attempts by the defendants to minimize their actions on January 6th by casting blame on Trump and others. Quote, in both instances, the court, meaning Judge Chutkan, was appropriately responding to and ultimately rejecting a common argument raised by scores of January 6 offenders, that they deserved leniency because their actions were inspired by or were not as serious as those of others who contributed to the riot but had not been held responsible, including former President Donald Trump, the defendant in this case. The special counsel's office said, while accusing Trump of attempting to cast Chutkan's comments in a sinister light. The prosecutors urged Chutkan to reject the recusal effort, arguing that Trump's request fell well short of the legal standard for a judge to recuse himself or herself from a case. The former president has until Sunday to file a reply to the special counsel's arguments. And I, for one, very much look forward to Donald Trump's reply. But you know what, friends? With this one, how about we let Jack Smith do the talking? Government's response in opposition to defendant's motion for recusal of district judge pursuant to the applicable statute. And here's how Jack Smith's reply begins. There is no valid basis under the relevant law and facts for the Honorable Tanya S. Chutkan, United States District Judge for the District of Columbia, to disqualify herself in this proceeding. In service of his motion seeking the court's recusal, the defendant both takes out of context the court's words from prior judicial proceedings and misstates the proper legal standards governing judicial recusals. Bam. Jack Smith continues. To support his claim, the defendant, Trump, cherry-picks portions of the court's sentencings of two individuals for their crimes related to the January 6, 2021 attack on the United States Capitol. In both instances, the court was appropriately responding to and ultimately rejecting a common argument raised by scores of January 6 offenders, that they deserve leniency because their actions were inspired by or were not as serious as those of others who contributed to the riot but had not been held responsible, including former President Donald J. Trump, the defendant in this case. The court's statements addressing this sentencing mitigation argument were factually accurate, responsive to arguments presented to the court, and evidenced no improper bias or prejudgment of the current case. Double bam, Jack Smith continued. In addition, the defendant attempts to apply the wrong recusal standard to the court's statements, where, as here, a recusal motion is based on statements made by a judge during judicial proceedings in response to facts and arguments placed before her. Recusal is warranted only in the rarest circumstances, where the statements display a deep-seated favoritism or antagonism that would make fair judgment impossible. The challenged statements fell well short of that mark. And while the defendant seeks to avoid the applicable legal standard by asserting that the court's opinions derive from some source outside of the courtroom, he provides no basis for this claim. Because the defendant's motion fails to establish any bias by the court, much less the deep-seated antagonism required for recusal, the court has a duty to continue to oversee this proceeding. The defendant's motion should be denied. Yeah, that would be triple bam. I love good lawyering. Now, friends, let me add that this motion was submitted under the signature block of Special Counsel Jack Smith, but the two assigned federal prosecutors on this motion are Molly Gaston and Thomas Wyndham. And those prosecutors, together with Jack Smith and the rest of his team, are representing the interests of the American people extraordinarily well. So really the only thing left to say is that Donald Trump's motion to remove Judge Tanya Chutkan from the case will be denied. You know why? Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.